Bingo introduces Live Football Bingo, where events in every English Premier League game can win you prizes for a £1 card. And the fastest full house of the season is worth £20,000. Head to matchbingo.co.uk for more information. Over 18s only. Be gamble aware. Get yourself over to matchbingo.co.uk for more information. Hello again, my friends, and you are my friends, and welcome to your Talking Town. I'm your host, The Gov, the fan platform for fans of the greatest football team on God's green earth, Ipswich Town FC, by the fans of Ipswich Town FC. So we are here this evening because the club announced their player retention list. We're going to go through it, see what we think, see what we feel. We are live in a little bit more detail tomorrow night, 8 p.m, myself and the designer George Nunn, looking at squad planning part 3 now, actually, onto attackers and strikers. We're going to identify who perhaps should be staying around the squad and who we feel should be maybe departing for other clubs. We'll also take into account a couple of the names that have come out today on the retention list. And then live we go on Sunday, 7:45 in the evening, where myself and Matt Phillips, we're looking at players we should identify or try and target in those positions, the strikers and goalkeepers. As always, this is the platform for the fans, so please do get involved, have your say this evening. It's a topic that's been tweeted about, spoken about on Facebook, etc. So I thought let's go live and have a quick conversation in regards to it. So do get your comments in. We've got a few coming in already, and if you're watching on catch up, as many of you do, welcome. Please leave your comments in the comments section on YouTube, and I'll try and get back to them as quickly as I can. Hit the like, share to all your friends, and subscribe. But if you do anything today, just hit the like button. It does help us out. We've got Jason in the room. Welcoming Jason. Mike's here. Andy's here. Nick asks, what's everyone doing pre-season? I'm off to Wembley Sunday, League 2 playoff. Yeah, a few Town fans I've seen have tweeted they're off to Wembley to support ex-Town goalkeeper Thomas Holy. So have a great day Sunday. AD's here, the Stowmarket legend. Big Phil Blundell is here. Welcome, Phil. Ben Moore, evening all. First lot of chemo done. Stem cell next Tuesday, I think, or whenever the 30th is. Ben, we are wishing you all the best, my man. I'm praying for you. And it is indeed next Tuesday. Good evening, Lyndon. Hope you're well. Paul's here. Lots chiming in. Lots coming in. Love it. Player retention list. Contracts offered to some. Many released. We'll get the thoughts and feelings as we go through the evening. And I'm joined by Brandon Dan Carter to help me do this. Brandon, it's been a while, my man. How are you?
I'm brilliant. We're promoted. Last time we spoke, we were a League One side, and now look at us.
We are a League One side no longer.
Brilliant.
Look, exactly. The Town are going up, as the overlay says. Are you confident? Are you excited for what the summer has in store for us?
I am. I don't think any fans can be anything but excited with what this club has been since Game Changer. They've changed the game, haven't they? It's in the name. They've come in and they've completely changed the whole complexion of Ipswich Town and the whole vibes that are running through the fan base. So it's brilliant time to be an Ipswich fan.
Absolutely. And we've got Andy to ask anyone else amused by the Wrexham podcast. That is a talking point on tomorrow's show. Ollie Palmer, I'm gonna beg your forgiveness, Ollie, but I didn't know who you were until the podcast. We'll discuss it tomorrow. You got any thoughts? Have you seen it? Have you heard of it?
I have, yeah.
You want to give me a quick 10-second overlay of what you think of it?
I understand that if you're looking at it from their point of view, they're not that clued up on it. They're just talking sort of clearly unplanned, and they're just trying to put their point across on how much the owners have done for their club.
Yeah.
But obviously there's a way of doing it, isn't there? There's no need to, as people have said, they could have said that, started their sentences of absolute rubbish with, tell me if I'm wrong, but I thought that blah, 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 but they've said it as if it's facts. I think that's where the problem is that they've said it when none of what they've said is then true. So
That's the podcasting
There's a
business
way
there,
of
Brennan.
exactly. They're getting publicity from it though, aren't they? From
Exactly.
talking about it. So I'm sure Ben
Yeah.
Foster will be happy about that.
Well, yeah. I'm sure I'm sure it was well reasoned. It just a little bit misinformed.
I'm all for people talking about how much the owners have done for that club, because I'm sure that Wrexham will be battling it out at the top end of League Two next year. So what those Hollywood owners have done for the club is massive, but there's no need to bring other teams in just because they have famous people within the club, because Ed Sheeran's role is very different to Rob and Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, because one's an owner, one's a sponsor. Ben Hobbs is in the room. Ben, I believe, is the man responsible behind some of the great videos you see on social media. Another one dropped today. He's done it again, ladies and gentlemen. Go and check it out. I'll try and link it before the end of the show if I can. But if it is the same Ben Hobbs that I'm thinking of that does the videos, Ben, you're smashing it out of the park, my man. Keep it going. Right, talking of smashing it out of the park, Town have announced their player retention list. Let's start with the released players. They're on the screen right now. I'll try and make it, if you excuse the joke, a little bit bigger. There we go. So there's your release. We'll start one by one. Joel Coleman, obviously, signed when we had an injury to the goalkeeping department. You're not surprised here, really, are you?
No, I think he's a journeyman goalkeeper, clearly towards the end of his career. And it'll probably be a mutual sort of thing. I'm sure they probably turned around and said, look, you're not going to be anything more than a third choice goalkeeper here. And I'm sure that he wants to go and play football elsewhere. So, wish him the best, but he got probably one of the best seats in the house to the promotion party. So we should all be happy for him.
Yeah, and as we discussed on last Wednesday's show with part one, goalkeepers and defenders of our squad planning, the young New Zealand goalkeeper has just been signed. He'll compete. That third position is always does it go to a journeyman? Does it go to a young player? But he's been released. Richard Keogh has been released. No mention as of today, the 23rd of May, of a coaching opportunity being presented to Richard. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen in the future, but everyone was assuming, Brandon. Obviously, he was here for the year. Then he would just sort of transition into a coach at the football club. Could still happen, but as of yet hasn't been announced that's the direction. So any surprises there with Richard being released and no coaching role currently?
No, again, he probably feels that at some level he can still play football, and obviously as a footballer, I'm sure you want to hold on to those times when you feel like you're capable of playing football. I saw around social media a couple of weeks ago that I think Carlisle were possibly a club that were
really?
interested in Richard Keogh. It might be absolute rubbish. But you wouldn't be surprised if a League Two team or a lower end League One team have given him a call and said, look, you'll be further up our depth chart than you would be at Ipswich. So if you want to carry on playing, the offer's there. Yeah. And I'm sure he might have had the discussions with Ipswich that we all thought that he might do about a coaching role. But there's time, isn't there? They might turn around and say, look, if you don't want to come and coach here now, go and play the rest of your football, however long that may be, and give us a call in the future. Those sort of conversations.
Yeah, a year removed from Championship football, Richard Wood has just been released in the Championship. He's 37, and I believe he's going to be carrying on playing. So 36 isn't old. It's not young. There's no spring chicken. But yeah, he might be considering the fact he has another year. He believes left in him, and as you say, sort of delaying that coaching opportunity, whether it's at this football club or whether it's or whether it's not. Matt Penny also on the list. Left back Matt Penny. Lewis Robertson probably is crying into a beer this evening, or working the phones as his agent. Obviously it's a joke for those that are new to watching us. But he is a big Matt Penny fan. Out on loan for most of the season. Signed as a prospect from Wednesday on a free 2 years ago. Is it fair to say it's never really worked out for him here? And again, another one where you're not blown away by it, are you? That he's been released,
no,
or are you? I don't know.
I think us getting promoted to the Championship was probably the writing on the wall for a lot of our players that have been released. Matt Penny, I think, is a fairly solid left back for League One level, and I think he probably fits maybe a 5 at the back as a wing back more, which I suppose
Yeah.
you could say is maybe the role that Leif Davis plays. So he might be a pretty not decent replacement, but in terms of depth, he wouldn't have been the worst player to have in the
More
squad.
like Leaf than Greg Lee, perhaps. Not, and I'm not.
Yeah,
This is not based on
the player
defend. This is based on
profile
the
and the
ability
traits.
going
Yeah,
forward.
absolutely. Yeah, the traits and the attributes that they have. I think Greg Lee is a better defender than even Leif Davis is. But it's in terms of profiles and what McKenna's looking at. I just think Penny's been a little bit, maybe a bit lightweight whenever I've seen him play for Ipswich. Obviously, the crosses towards the back post were a big problem when we weren't having a lot of success. It was always the floated ball to the back
Plymouth
stick
away?
where Penny.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, last year. Yeah. And I haven't obviously seen him play this year. I know that when he went on loan to Motherwell, I think it was, they loved him there. I think he picked up 2 Player of the Month awards, and there's a football career there for Matt Penny. It was this year, yeah.
Is she well?
Yeah, she's brilliant. Yeah.
The oldest check in the book is the good one.
But yeah, there's definitely a career there for Matt Penny in probably League One standard, or if not, he might go back up to Scotland. But
if the deal was right, they loved him, as you say. Ben Moore says Colchester or Cambridge for Keogh and Penny, and he was first on the Penny doubt train. I will always remember Ben Moore with the low rating for Matt Penny in the early days, and everyone was like, if he said that rating now, we would go, yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, you're probably right. So yes, Ben, you were up
I think he got a lot of stick, but I think that he was playing in a 4 when maybe he suits a 5. And when teams work out your weakness, that a fullback is maybe not great in the air, then that's a problem, isn't it? I think, was it Marcus Stewart or I think it was Marcus Stewart, possibly was on this pod, or if not when he was commentating. He talked about Matt Penny's positioning when the cross is coming in, and how, that can be trained into you. The position you take when a cross is coming in can easily be trained to you, so he can easily get better at that. But wouldn't surprise me if he ends up playing for a decent League One team next year.
Got a few comments coming in. Yeah, agree with that. Jamie says, for sure, Matt Penny and KVY will soon find clubs. Steve, shame on KVY, start off on fire. I one of our better players at the beginning. Being Frank on Ipswich, welcome in, Frank. Sad to see Keogh move on. Matt Penny started very well, but his marking was abysmal at times, sadly. And obviously, the last of those player released lists, or the last player on the list, is Kane Vincent-Young. And as I'm with Liz when Liz says gutted with KVY. So am I. KVY, fantastic servant for the football club. A good player, hampered by injuries, and who knows what would have happened had he stayed fit, particularly in that first season when everything he touched was just dynamite. It was just an exciting time to watch. A right back that we hadn't seen really of that caliber since David Wright, maybe, and without trying to overlook anybody between David Wright and KVY. Just a player that could excite you, score, create. And yeah, I'm not surprised he's been released, Brandon, but I am gutted, the same as Liz is there, because the injuries, it's just the biggest what if for me with KVY.
Yeah, I think that when his injuries started, I think that's when our downfall started in the first League One campaign we had. I remember going through the downfall with, I think, Downs was out injured for a long period of time. I think Norwood possibly was out injured, and KVY. And they were sort of, you look through it and you're like, our best player in about 5 different positions weren't in the squad.
Yep.
And unfortunately, he's never really recovered from that. You also don't know where Kane Vincent-Young would be if Janoy the boy didn't come back to town and set the place alight as well. Because obviously he was down the pecking order, but I just think that McKenna wants a little bit more physicality and a bit more of a, what's the word? More versatility there in that right-sided defender, so we can have the ability to go into a 3 or into a 4, and that's just not KVY. I feel like whenever he did play, it did come into a very strict 4-4-2 because he wasn't able to play as a third centre half. And he's a brilliant pickup for whoever does end up getting KVY. And I know that he's posted on his social media saying he's loved every day of the 4 years he spent at town. And yeah, everyone has a soft spot for him. Matt Phillips saying that he was going to score 10 league goals, I wouldn't have doubted
certainly
that if he
did.
stayed fit. So as I said, no doubt at all if we see him in a League One team this season, this time next year, because he just has that ability. Do you know what I mean? He gets you for a right back to get you on the edge of your seat. That's saying something, and that's the ability he did have.
Spot on. And many people are sharing the same. George says KVY should easily find another League One club. Steve, KVY played in any position he was asked to. If he keeps fit, sure he'll do well for the next club. Joey, KVY clearly had to change the way he played due to injuries. He used to be electric and run at players, but maybe those short bursts of speed were causing a lot of his injuries. Ben, I said KVY going forward was like villainous, quick, always threatening. Saying we never had backup to him in those early days. And Frank started brilliantly. This is on KVY, but injuries and his confidence being shattered when he got booked, got penalty away, and then was replaced for 28 minutes under Paul.
He was having an awful day that day, though.
That was against Alpha Lion, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, Alpha Lion, great.
I almost the half hour I've seen, I think, a defender have, and it's not his fault. Like we saw Leif Davis early doors of this season against Bolton, funnily enough. But I wouldn't say that's what. I'd say it was injuries rather than that 28 minutes that's done.
Yeah, I agree.
But I tell you what, I wouldn't be surprised with if he ends up at Plymouth in the Championship. I just think the way they play, they play with wing backs. I'm not saying he'll start for them, but obviously they won't have players like Barley Mumba who play as wing backs, and he's sort of that profile. Wouldn't be surprised if he ends up at a club like that.
Good shout. And obviously you mentioned JD there, the Don, and I made a comment there just a second ago in the chat from Steve in regards to the position that KVY can play, and maybe the fact that Don can also play right back, left back, centre back. You want one or two versatile players in the football squad, maybe 1, 2 at a push. You've got JD there who can do 3. Do you need KVY? Because otherwise you're just sort of overloading on a player that can do 3, but you're not. Is he really going to sort of threaten for the first team? And KVY this year has certainly never done that. Academy players released are on the screen now. Fraser Alexander, Albie Armin, Harley Curtis, Alfie Cutbush, Matt Healy, Max Hudson, Brooklyn Kumbongolo, Callum Page, Lewis Ridd, and Charlie Woods. Any surprise with the academy? I mean, Albie Armin's the biggest sort of one. Matt Healy possibly.
Probably 2 for me, and it's not Matt Healy. Albie Armin is surprising in a way. I was going to touch on it there when we talk about maybe having too much versatility. You could also look at it that the coach hasn't found your best position, and I think that might be the case for Albie Armin. From my understanding of following the youth teams, I think he sometimes plays at centre half, he sometimes plays in centre midfield. And if you look at the youngsters that we brought through, he's certainly not got he hasn't got the build that maybe an Elkan Baggett has at the same age to play centre half.
Good shout.
If you look at Cameron Humphreys, who's coming through at the first team at a similar age, he hasn't got the ability to play in the middle of the park like Cameron Humphreys. Yeah, I think what a lot of people have to realise when it comes to the youth setup is I'm pretty sure 90% of players at every club don't make it at the club they're a youth at. Yeah. These players, I'm sure a lot of these might not even make it in professional football at all, but they'll go on to get very good semi-professional careers. And some of these will have a career, and some of them might take off at other clubs. But,
and some might be the next Kieran McKenna.
Absolutely. The laws of averages suggest that some of these players will make it and some of them won't make it a professional footballer at all. And you've also got to realise that as Ipswich are going up the leagues, they're also looking at players who they think will break into the first team at the standard that they're either in or that they're aspiring to be in. And you look at the club, you've got, as I said, Elkan Baggett, Cameron Humphreys. They're probably looking at Corey Ndaba. A year ago, we were all thinking, maybe he could get in and around the first team in League One. They're now going to have to look at and think, if he reaches his absolute ceiling in terms of potential, is he going to be good enough to play at the level we're playing at or want to play at?
Yeah,
and that's what they're thinking of. I mean, they brought in that Max Hudson was the other one I was alluding to. They brought him in last July. He hasn't lasted a year at the football club. They brought him in as a left back from Tottenham, I think. And he's straight out the door. Every time I've looked at the team sheet, he started as a fullback, and we're talking about 2 fullbacks that have left the club on, have been released. So if there's ever a time that you'd keep some young fullbacks, it's now. And we've got a crop of really good under-18s. I think what Ipswich do, as those players get older, they're going to take a space of these under-21s that are getting released. And to make that space, the people who have got longer maybe to reach their potential, they're going to go and fill those spaces.
Absolutely.
And I can only think of about 5 players through the whole youth setup that I've seen that might make it. They're those. Is it Rio Morgan, the lad in the under-18s, the winger? He's setting things alight. You've got the 2 Barbrook brothers, is it? The twins. Both of them are doing really well. And then you've got obviously Humphreys and Baggett, as I mentioned. But a lot of these will not make it at Ipswich, and I think we do understand that.
Well, that's the thing, and obviously Frank, being Frank on Ipswich Town says, but some do. Nick Pope was a local lad, prime example of a kid who slipped through the net, and this is what it is. And this is what the young lads, and as Steve says, hopes the club can help and support the academy leavers. I'm sure the club will give them the best support possible. When leaving the football club, no doubt about that. I just believe it's an opinion. Football is an opinion-based sport. These players have been judged and assessed by an opinion or opinions. Doesn't mean they're right, doesn't mean they're wrong. And as being Frank says, Nick Pope making a great save last night to get Newcastle a point into the Champions League. It happens, and you're right in what you say. Some will be great, some will go on to have good semi-pro careers, and others will not. David says, David's given a €5 super sticker. Thank you, David. And Thomas says, never seen Albion in play, but on FM, he's a great player. So shame to see him released. And I echoed that with Tom.
I think that what I will say as well, in terms of what you just said there, that every single academy have different profiles that they want from youngsters, all the way from the age of 8 years old. I have one of my work colleagues' sons is coming through at Colchester. He used to be at Ipswich, but during the Marcus Evans days, I know everyone's going to be surprised. The youth academy was not run very well. But in the time that their son's been at Colchester, they've seen some of the players who, in terms of output, in terms of the goals, assists, or wherever they play, the statistics you want, they've been let go because they're not tall enough, or they don't have the correct build, or they're not growing enough to fit the academy. And Ipswich are now going to be looking at players differently to what they were 2 years ago. When you go in League One, they're probably looking at, we need some physicality, we need some meat on the bones, because that's what League One is.
And also the manager wants a different
and Kieran McKennan's going to look at it,
player.
He's going to want people who are good on the ball. It might not matter
technically very good.
That's why players like Cameron Humphreys. That's why we have Connor Chaplin. That probably one of the smaller players in League One, who is arguably was one and is one of the best players, who is currently, if you go into the statistics of 2022-2023, the best player in League One.
Absolutely.
It's all about profiles when you're young. As I said, even down to the age of 8 years old, that's what academies have. Everyone has different. They left the lads that I was talking about who had all this good output. They've left Colchester Academy and they've gone to Arsenal. So it's very strange for youngsters. But I'm sure all of these players, if they're still fit, they haven't got bad injuries, they all still have a chance. And that's what I'm sure would be the message that Ipswich would have gave them as they left the club. Go and push, keep going. There's a career out there for you, because they wouldn't have got this far if they didn't have potential to make it. So that's what I think we should all.
And it's a cutthroat business, this football. Before we come to the player, offered a contract list of players, 2 loan players. I won't ask you about George Hurst, because I think it's a 99.9% unanimous yes, you would. Tyrese John Jules, obviously did a podcast recently and really enjoyed his time at the football club. On loan from Arsenal, gone back to Arsenal. Would you or would you not be looking to sign, either on loan or permanent, Tyrese John Jules again next year?
I think it will depend on the role that he's happy to play, because I don't think that I'd be signing him based on his sort of current experience. I wouldn't be signing him to start in the Championship. And it's weird that, obviously, we're going to touch on ALUKO in a minute. The fact that we've retained ALUKO, to me, suggests now there's one space of depth that maybe has been taken up by doing that Tyrese John Jules might have been able to fill.
For me, Tyrese is a player that if we'd stayed in League One, it would be a categorically 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
But not in the Championship. I wasn't mad about him and his time here this season, like the way some people were.
Yeah.
So it's not a player I'm rushing out to say, well,
Yeah.
he's got to be, one of the first 4 or 5 in the door. If I've got space in the squad come August and some budget, yeah, okay, yeah, why not?
Yeah, if he was on a free, that I think a lot of the thoughts were 6 months ago that he was on a free, that his contract was expiring at the end of the year, but there's been some sort of confusion about that, and it turns out he's still got another year left at Arsenal, so there would be a fee that would need to be paid.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. As I said, if he does sign, I think that he would be signing under the impression that he's going to be there in the squad, but he's at the age where if he stays fit and he's training with Kieran McKenna every week, he's going to be a much better footballer at the end of the year, whether he plays much or not. That there will then be another stepping stone for him to go and get with another Championship club or a League One club. So I think if the offer's still there, I'm sure it will still appeal to him. But it depends. I'm sure there'll be many other teams who want him on a loan or a permanent, where he will be offered more football than he will be at Town.
Absolutely right. So 3 players offered a contract: Chihuahua, Massimo Luongo, and Sonny ALUKO. We'll leave Sonny till last. Chihuahua, I'm going to proclaim or profess or confess, I don't know much about the player. I'm going to be brutally honest, Brandon. If you know anything, say it now. If not, we'll assume
I've seen
some talent there.
I think we've probably seen about altogether across the maybe 4 or 5 appearances he's made in the Papa John's Trophy in the time we've played it. I think he's probably played the equivalent of 90 minutes. So, as you said, we haven't got much to look at. I think he played possibly a half this year. Was it away to Cambridge? I think he might have played.
Yeah, I think I'm sure I read somewhere, and don't quote me, that they may have offered him a deal, obviously with some interest in the lad from higher clubs. That there's a compensation.
Yeah, I think his name has been floating about there, but
could come
I do think if there is interest in high clubs, it's always worth Ipswich trying to pen a deal down, whether that means that it's for us or not. If teams up the pyramid see some potential in him, then maybe we should as well.
Here we go. It comes from the TWTD article from Phil Hammett, and he just writes, it seems likely that Town have made the contract offer in order to make sure they receive compensation when he moves to another club, rather than with an expectation that he will sign. So there you go. That's information.
I think he's done really well for our under-23s. I always remember seeing him on the score sheet and things like that. So. And he did look bright in the glimpses I think we did see of him in the Papa John's Trophy. But I said it's going to be harder for these youngsters to break through now that we are on the up and moving through the leagues. Like as you said, sort of like if we were in League One and we were still sort of like having our hands tied behind our back money wise, then all these youngsters are probably playing, probably in the 18-man squad. But at the end of the day, we've signed 35 players in the last 18 months, so. It's going to be hard for any of these players to come through.
We won't talk about Massimo in detail. It's been done quite a bit over the last couple of weeks. I don't think anyone is surprised. Steve wants to know what the length of deal was offered to particularly ALUKO and Luongo. I'm going to guess at 1 year. Wouldn't be surprised if Luongo. I'm going to guess at 1 year. I don't know for sure, but we'll finish the show, and obviously we're live again tomorrow. 8 p.m. Myself and George Nunn looking at your midfielders and your strikers and who we will be moving out. And this is a player I would have said categorically, and I'm going to sit here tonight and I'm going to say I'm very surprised he has been offered a new contract. I sat here 3 years ago and I was surprised we gave Aaron Drinan a new contract, only then to sell him for a nominal 20, 30, 40, 50,000 fee. Is that the situation here with ALUKO? Don't know. Possibly, but I am surprised as we sit here tonight, Brandon, that Sonny ALUKO has been given a new deal. Just to put some meat on the bone, stats this year, obviously has some injury problems, which at 34 is never a good thing because, you're coming towards let's talk about Keogh earlier, the end of your career. The more injuries you get towards that end of your career, it slows you down, it hampers you, takes you longer to recover from, etc. But he's played 14 games. Well, he's played in 14 games, started 4. 0 goals, 1 assist, 0 big chances created, 0.6 key passes. I'm going to have to say it's either a sign to sell, or it's a Kieran McKenna is super Kieran McKenna, and I know absolutely nothing compared to him, and I will bow to that knowledge because I am confused.com. Brandon, over to you.
Yeah, I think what this might be, right? This might be, we're going to offer you a contract. It's going to say player, so you might get some minutes. But what we really want is you to have a sort of in the dressing room coaching role. Because I think that's what his role has really been since January, since we brought in Broadhead Hurst. He hasn't hardly made a match day squad other than the game that he started, I think, away to Bristol Rovers, when it could have been the worst performance Ipswich had all season. Because I remember watching that game and on Valentine's night, and I was wishing that it was Halloween. Yeah, I think if ALUKO, I think this deal is probably going to be like what I sort of touched on, that will probably be offered to John Jules. He's going to be someone who's probably aware he's not going to be in many match day squads. He's not going to get many minutes, but he's happy to be at the club and maybe do some coaching courses whilst he's here. But he's just a good head to have around the dressing room. I think Kieran McKenna brought in players like Keogh, players like ALUKO were here, so you can have a leader maybe in each position meeting. For the attackers, ALUKO would be in the meetings, Keogh would be in the defenders, and Morsey would be the leader in the midfield. I think it's going to be similar to that.
Yeah. I'm just reading Norman's comment there. Difference between ALUKO and Drinnan. The Gov doesn't love ALUKO. For the record, I never loved Aaron Drinnan. And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm going to have to go back and dig out that show we did on the Monday night after they released the player retention, player contract situation, because we all thought there'd be this mass clear out. And then it was sort of, we've signed this player to a new deal, this. And I remember I nearly blew a gasket.
If it does help, you might agree with me here, but I might just be shooting in the wind, right? I was actually really impressed with Drinnan after the first game we had in League One.
Yes, I wasn't. I never bought the Aaron Drinnan hype.
I thought that game he looked decent for how little football he'd ever had in Ipswich Town, to then be starting in that game. I thought he'd done
against
quite
Wigan.
well.
Hit the bar. I remember it, but I never bought that hype. But I blew a gasket that night, and I'm just sitting here sort of proud of myself a little bit. Like, podcast is maturing. I've come a long way in 3 years. I'm not.
But Martin,
steaming out of the years.
Last year you predicted Harper to be Player of the Year, Martin.
Year before, actually, and I didn't sign him for £1 million. That was my cash in. So even the best get it wrong.
That's
you know, me and Mark, we get it wrong from time to time. Not that I
was excited about Harper, to be fair. I was also excited about Raheem Harper. So you're not allowed.
I still am. There's a player in there somewhere. We just got to find him. Steve Kirby, ALUKO showed class in League One games, but not a good enough player in Championship. Nathan, with Keogh going, maybe kind of want to give a real experience head, echoing what you were saying just there. Phil, sorry, I missed your comment there. It's just be down to the fact that ALUKO's an experienced head. Only 2 or 3 players at the age of 30 within the squad. George is hoping Jackson's gone. Never had him on a good season since we signed him. Confused as to why he's had 5 years here. 1 more year left on Caden Jackson's deal there, George. And being frank, with a great comment of the show. This is a great show, and we are proud to play a small part in it. It is very informative.
That's us. We're informative.
That's us,
not
Frank.
Opinionated.
Don't believe what you read elsewhere.
Facts.
We know our onions. Facts and logic. Stats and facts. That's what we do. That's what we do. That's who we are. Right. There we go. Player retention list done for another year. Done, dusted. We're back live tomorrow. Here's Mr. Brandon Dan Carter. I am the Gov. Join us tomorrow. Join us Sunday. Have a great evening. And I'll see you all down the road. You make me smile when I think of you. If I